Hi, I'm Francina,
I'm Jackie.
and welcome to the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast.
This podcast is an inquiry into whether rest and love and justice can produce transformative social change. The dominant narrative is this overwork and this glorification of it, especially in the justice space. And here, we're going to question that notion.
Come sit with us as we meet our collective humanity and share stories around rest, love, and justice. It is our hope to create a shift that enables us to recognize that racial justice work is a human issue. It affects us all. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast. I am your host, Francina Call, and this is my co-host,
Jackie Gao.
She
I know how
forgot
to
her
say my
name.
name. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us
Yeah,
today.
it is an exciting day because we have an amazing guest, someone who I love dearly. My niece, Ninelise Duve, is joining us for this podcast. And I'm just going to do a brief introduction. I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up. Ninelise Duve is from Ntebe, Gwanda in Zimbabwe. She was born and raised in different Lutheran communities because of being a reverend's kid. She is the third out of four children, currently attending school at Cal Lutheran University in the United States, third year, and studying global studies. Her current focus is on research and is currently looking at China's investments in Africa as well as healing and restorative justice for Black communities. Welcome to the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast, Nina.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. Two wonderful women that I adore so much.
Oh.
You guys are doing amazing work, and I'm so grateful to be here and to share my stories and just to have a conversation with you.
Oh, wow. We are honored to have you here. So, we're just going to jump into our very first question on our podcast, which is what is your story around rest? And your story around rest, not in how are you currently resting, because that's a different conversation, but really from your family of origin. What did you grow up with? What did rest look like for you growing up in Zimbabwe?
Hey, so looking at how I grew up in Zimbabwe, and I took rest in many different forms, depending on the season and the setting of that. So my favorite season was the Christmas season, in which it was the holiday where we would go to the village during that Christmas season to visit our grandparents, and we would have them in the farms, like with farm work and harvesting maize and groundnuts, which is some of my favorites, like traditional foods in Zimbabwe. And so,
Same, same,
but
same.
say, yeah. So, we did labor. We carried out labor with the grandparents, and the amazing part was that it wasn't just the grandparents, but we'd have like the community to come out and help during those times in harvesting and just working in the fields. And so, that kind of labor that we carried out was its own rhythm of rest. Because you're with family and you have all the kinds of people coming in to help and just sharing stories, just sitting under trees and just having that laughter with um, people from your community. And so rest in this sense was communal and connected to nature. And you could just feel and have that sound of the rural background while all this was happening. So you could just feel that this is rest.
Hmm. Wow, wow. I have to say, thank you for bringing that forward because I grew up in the same country as Nina. And I was always so aware that my gogo, my grandmother, never rested. I never saw her sit down for anything. She was always working. And I missed the communal aspect that replenished us when we were all together because it's so true. Like, I didn't grow up in the rural areas. My grandmother lived in a township, and her community would have fields that they rented, which we called munda. And my grandmother would wake up in the morning, like at the butt crack of dawn, 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning, when it's still dark, and she would go to the fields with her friends, and we would bring her tea at the fields with her friends. And I totally have not ever connected with how restorative that was because, she would sit down to drink tea when we brought it, and then we would take over. And we would have, the hose, and we would be like, we call it kusakura. And we were like, working and laughing with our cousins. And then, like, when it was time to harvest, all the cousins would come and we'd be laughing and telling stories. And yeah, there definitely was a potency that allowed our spirits to rest because we were in community and the joy that we felt being together. So,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, and it felt like that was different kind of joy too for the grandparents, just to see all the grandkids together just coming. Because we always knew that Christmas is coming, so we have to go to the village. Everyone is coming.
That
Everyone's gonna be there.
that's
So
true. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you for bringing that forward for us.
It sounds like even though there was a lot
definitely.
of labor, there was also a lot of, you said, enjoyment, like, under the tree and then just, like, connection on your own terms and your own timing, and being present with the land to be
Mhm.
connected with the harvest and the community. That sounds restful and maybe different than how I thought about rest too. Like, it can
Yeah.
be in a communal space where we're um, sharing the work together.
Mm. Wow. Thank you for bringing that forward, Jackie. And I think this is an important point I want to bring forward for our listeners that the ability to share work contributes to our rest. Our ability to share work contributes to our rest and it accesses parts of our joy and our connection um, that is so overlooked when we work individually, especially when we live in a country like the United States, where everyone is so individualistic and they feel like their worth is tied to how much they produce on their own because that produces their value to company to a corporation organization, but we don't delegate enough. And maybe when we share the work we are actually contributing to our rest even when we are working.
Yeah.
Wow, that just lit me up, just making that connection just lit me up in a big way.
Well, and you already
Yeah.
chatted a little bit about community, but our next question is, what is your story around love for self and community?
So on that, I would come in with how love is shaped for me deeply around the African philosophy, Ubuntu,
Mm.
which emphasizes on interconnectedness. I am because we are.
Say that again for the people in the back.
Ubuntu, I am because we are.
Mm.
That is just love when it's on. So for me, I think because my this is one of the things that my parents always emphasized on. Um, they modeled us through like this faith and hospitality. I once talked about how I grew up around immigrants and refugees coming into our home for safety and just for a place to feel at home as immigrants. And then that act was not like charity or anything, but it was an extension of God's love, as my father would always say, that this is me extending God's love to his people. So this taught me that love is active and just providing that safety and comfort and belonging to others. So I think my love for self developed over time, often in spaces of reflection, and also going to boarding school was a pivotal role. As I met people from different walks of life and expected me, which and I expected myself to like, I don't know, not to fit in, but somehow it helped me to be a part of community, to see the importance of both individuality and connectedness with both my friends at boarding school and also coming back home and having to meet different people from different walks of faith coming in looking for homes.
She's brilliant, like I said. I mean, I'm gobsmacked, but also sitting in the auntie role of just, like, complete pride, listening to everything you're saying, because, yeah, we are. We are. I love that ubuntu. Like, it's so I've heard it so many times, and I think that it speaks again to the interconnectedness, the necessity for our
Mhm.
connection as human beings, right? We are
Yes.
better when we are connected to ourselves, and we can connect with our community better when we're connected to ourselves, right? And yeah, I love it.
And I mean, what
Yeah.
I learned in the US, and I don't know what phase of my, traditional public schooling was, I think, therefore I am, which is so different than I am because we are. Like, that is so fundamentally different, the individualism within even that phrase. And so the fact that, this representation of your community and African, wisdom is so part of your love for yourself, and this amazing gift that your family gave to other families that needed refuge, and a way to
Yeah.
spread love to other
Yeah.
people, in different walks of life too. What an amazing offering.
Yeah, and I'm even, like, tracking I mean, this podcast interview is literally blowing my mind because she's talking about things that I grew up with, but I'm seeing them in another light. Like, I went to boarding school and I hated every minute of my
Yeah.
life in boarding school. I mean, I would get to boarding school and I would have a timer, like a countdown, how many days until I can go home. And again, I never connected with how close I was to my sisters in the dorm because of the community that we
I
created.
mean, yeah.
All of us
Yeah.
being away from home made us family.
Yeah. It was kind of a small refugee from
Yeah,
academic stress and everything, just connecting with your friends in the dorm and just
yeah,
forming friendships across cultures. And that's really restorative.
yes,
Mm.
my goodness. I mean, we even had an a cappella group in our dorm that I ran, and, like, I would teach all the people the parts, and we would, like, perform together. Oh my god. I'm sorry, I'm having a moment, and just accessing even the bits of joy around that communalness that we had, which back then I didn't look at as rest. And it's taking you how many 20, 30 years later to say it on the podcast for me to recognize that, wow, that was so restorative to sing with my sisters in the dorm. And I bring this forward because maybe there are ways that you're engaging in your community right now that you're thinking I'm so exhausted, but you're not even paying attention to how maybe some of the connections you have with your neighbor, or the walk that you have with your neighbor, or the walk when you take your dog out and you watch the sunset, or the moment that you meet another parent in the parking lot at school when you pick up your kids and you laugh about something that your child did. Those are moments of pause, moments of rest, and that can be restorative as well. So I just wanted to bring that forward for anyone else like me whose, mind is just like, "Whoa, I never thought that rest could come that way." But thank you, Nina, for reminding us that our interconnectedness is what, really helps us to rest deeply.
Also, when looking at this community as rest and also as love, I realized because I hated it every time when we had neighbors and other people just looking over, like disciplining us.
Yeah.
But I feel like that was because in Africa, like the phrase that it takes a village to raise you, it actually works. You have the whole village looking after you. My parents didn't need a babysitter when we were growing up. They'll just leave us and just say to the neighbor, I'm leaving for this amount of time. So you look after these kids. And she'll just come and they will come like from here and there just to check what is happening. And so if you did something wrong, they'll actually discipline you and say you did this wrong. You come and report to your parents, they'll discipline you and say, why did you have to be disciplined by the neighbor for doing something wrong? So it actually did take a village to raise the children. So that's another philosophy that I really liked about growing up in that setting where the whole community was there for you. You are not on your own, but you have
Mm,
the whole community to support you and to be there for you. So your
yeah.
life is not your life only, but
Mm,
it's shared with the whole community.
wow. Thank you. Thank you for reminding us all of that really important fact. So we're going to move to our third question, which is what is your story around justice? And not so much you as being an advocate for justice, that's going to be in the next section of questions, but more so your own personal experience with what did justice look like for you, either growing up? What is your experience of being an international student, for example, in the United States? And what are some things that you faced that you feel like, you know, if things were more equitable, I would have had a different experience.
So I think my story of justice would start from when I was young, having to share a plate of food with my siblings.
Mm.
That's justice. That share a plate of food. That was justice. So you know how to share equally so that
Mm,
you can go full in that plate to be um to learn what you have and to share with other people around you. And
mm,
that what you have sometimes is enough for you, you know. So that has just been my upbringing, and how also when I mentioned about my parents opening their homes to people who were facing hardships, that was also justice for those people. It instilled in me the belief that justice begins at home, and it starts with recognizing the dignity of others and ensuring that no one is left behind.
Hmm. Starts at home.
So
Justice starts at home. I love it's as simple as that.
it
Like,
starts at home. Yes.
I think, I mean, a lot of people come on the podcast and say that they're not doing enough. And so I
mhm.
love that this is a response to this kind of that comment, Nina, too, that you if you're practicing justice at home, then that's enough. Like that's where it begins with around the table, sharing food, making sure things are equal.
Yeah. And I love that, you're bringing forward for us how important, like myself as a parent, right? How do I live out justice practices or teach my children about justice in the world? It does start at home. And I think about how many people are not even able to have these conversations with their children. When you don't have those conversations with your children, they go in the world and try to figure it out. And then we end up with a lot of what we have going on in the world right now. So, yeah, thank you for that really important reminder. If we've got parents on this podcast listening today, um, yeah, opportunity to talk about the inequities that are in the world and how can we be part of the solution to make things more equal.
And I think too that's important. Like I just did some travel with some of my elders, like with my partner's mom and aunt and her husband and my dad, and just like how do we have conversations with older folks too about justice? Not being shy, being out there and saying like, I don't think this certain thing is just. And so, how do we have conversations with everyone at every age group as well?
Yeah, wonderful. So we're going to go to the next section of our questions, and we would love to have you share with us how do you embody rest right now in your life, or what is your rest practice?
For now, I just I find time to have family around me and to have friends around me, to find that rest and that justice around me. Because school work can be so overwhelming. You're trying to balance school, you're also trying to balance schoolwork, and you also have your own personal life. So that can be really challenging sometimes. But I guess just finding time to hang out with friends and share stories is just another form of rest, and finding time just for yourself to take a walk and just sitting. But sometimes, I mean, I feel guilty for just ignoring my work and just sitting around and just, but I then realize that when I rest, I feel good. It really feels good just to take a break from everything, just to ignore the world and just be on your own. And so I realized that self-care is not selfish at all.
Mm,
It's what you need. So I just disconnecting from everything is another form of rest that you need. But I have a current project that looks at healing and restorative justice, which stemmed from my experience in Ghana and South Africa during my semester at sea program, where I witnessed like wounds of colonization and apartheid. Just visiting slave castles in the Robben Island, it's revealed like the deep traumas that still affect Africa as a whole and African Americans today. So those experiences confirmed my belief that true justice involves healing, restoring what has been broken, and creating spaces for reconciliation. And so we have a program at school that's called Community Scholars for Black Lives, which commemorates the death of George Floyd. So I applied for that program and I got in. And so my topic is healing and restorative justice through art for Black communities.
mm,
Because I realized art is another form of expression and another form of rest
mm,
that we need to use, you know. So I'm really looking at the Black communities around here, Thousand Oaks, and how they find rest in art and
mhm.
how we can have those conversations around healing and restorative justice because healing is not healing is a progress.
Yeah.
So we need to have these conversations and to find forms that we feel safe in doing and where we find healing and restorative and
Mhm.
restoration.
Yeah. Wow. They're just again sitting over here, proud auntie, like just like, oof, my goodness, this child. She's going in the world and doing such amazingness. And it's interesting the work and I, Jackie, are doing with our other project, Recede, being able to name the different types of rest. Let me see if I can remember them. Physical rest, emotional rest, social rest, creative rest, emotional. Did I say emotional already?
I'm not sure. Spiritual?
Spiritual and creative. 7 types of rest. And it's been so interesting as I've been kind of like sitting with all the different types, you're kind of naming them, Nina, whether you know it or not, that, art, being able to go and look at a piece of art and connect with the wonder of it is restorative to our bodies, right? We think about people who are restored by art, that is creative rest. you know you've talked about social rest, when you connect with people that are healthy for you and that it restores your body, right? That is social rest. Physical rest, which is like laying down and just allowing your or stretching, which is another one that I have most recently learned that, wow, when I stretch my body, I actually bring ease to my body, right? So I love that you're working on this amazing project that is really going to make the world a better place because people will be able to recognize their ability to access all the different types of rest through so many different mediums. And at the end of the day, it always stems from our connection. Yeah. Okay, so our next question is, can you share with us what makes you feel loved, or how do you embody love in your body? What does love feel like in your body?
Feels like a steady, comforting presence
Hmm.
because it's about rest, right? Love and rest work well together. So I feel loved when someone makes space for me, whether through a simple gesture of kindness or listening, because you have to feel seen for you to love yourself
Oof!
too.
Wow.
You need to feel seen to love yourself and to feel loved. Because there are times when I don't feel seen and I just feel disconnected to myself and to others. But that reminder that you are seen, it brings comfort to me.
Hmm.
So I love going to Thursday chapels. We have chapel times here on campus on Thursdays. And then we have a chaplain who would always say, tell your neighbor that you are seen and you are loved. And so that moment is always one of the best moments for me during the weeks, just to go and to tell someone that they are seen and that they are loved. Because you need to tell some people sometimes that they are seen and loved. You may never know it, they need to hear it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm. I
Wow.
appreciate that so much, and sometimes it, like, surprises me when people see me, and then I'm like, "Oh, that is me. That is love for myself." Maybe in ways I hadn't seen in a little bit, like when someone recognizes you or really listens to the words that you're saying or individual expression and ties back into community. Like, we can't just another way to love ourselves is through the eyes of other people.
Mhm. And I just wanna add that your own ability to see yourself needs to be included in the seeing in the being seen. Because I think sometimes we can be so hyper focused on other people seeing us that it gives all of our own power to see ourselves away. When you are able to see yourself, you can give yourself the love that you need for you when you stop to see yourself. And that can look in so many different ways. Like it can look like making yourself a cup of tea. It can look like, massaging your own body, right? After a shower and, putting oil on your body. It can look like care for your hair. It can look like preparing and eating something that you really wanted to eat. That is also seeing yourself. And so I just want to remind our listeners too that, the seeing of to be seen also requires that you see yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and our final question, though there'll be space for more conversation, is how are you living out justice? And I know, Nina, you spoke a little bit about your restorative justice um, on campus, and we would love to create some links in our show notes to shout out to the restorative art justice you're doing. But yeah, anything else you want to share? What's coming forward about how you're living out justice?
Um, I think my focus on this art and as a form of healing and restoration. I'm gonna look at storytelling, art, and interviews and just do a documentary and just to bring out how people see art as a form of expression and healing and restoration in Black communities. So I'm creating space for people to share their experiences and express their truths. So I see justice as the act of listening, honoring stories, and making sure that voices, especially of the marginalized, are heard, and to remind Black people out there that they are seen.
Mm.
And one message that my friend loved when I was just talking and then I mentioned it out there. I said that Black is beautiful, Black is art, Black is talent, Black is unique. And so I just want to remind everyone out there that they are heard and they are seen.
Mm.
And healing is a progress.
I mean, it's not often that I got nothing to say or nothing to add, so I'm gonna just stop here.
Yeah,
I think she dropped the mic.
thanks, Nina.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. And myself being in a Black body, just how I needed to hear those words because we live in a world where we are constantly striving to show the beauty of us, right? Because people, for whatever reason, are not as primed to see it in us, our creativity, our art, our beauty, our uniqueness, right? And it took you speaking it out loud for me to access it myself today. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Nina. And I'm wondering if anything else you want to share in this space, anything to the listeners, to Francina or myself.
Um, I think I just love that we have this um, space that you guys have created. And just, I'm going to say that it's another form that helps me relax. Just listening to this podcast and listening to different people sharing their stories. I actually just take a time and just take a walk and just listen to this podcast because it's healing in its own way. You just listen to you and you learn something new each time you listen to this podcast. So I just want to thank you too for creating this space for people to share their stories and to be heard. It's really amazing. You're really doing an amazing work. And thank you for having me. I'm really honored and I loved sharing my story too.
I love this. Thank you, Nina. I'm so glad our podcast is supportive for you and restful for you. That's a dream come true. And also just that we can keep sharing stories and listening, like you said, like feeling loved is to listen, and justice is to listen, and see other people and be seen. And so just like for you to have this space where you can tell your story too, as I know you're providing that opportunity to others, like that just makes me happy to be able to be in a space with you having this conversation. So thank you for your time and energy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And that is a wrap on this episode of the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast. I am Proud Auntie signing off. Grateful to have such a brilliant niece who has come and lit my life up today. We hope that this story has lit your life up like it has for us. And we hope that you will continue to live out your life in ways that are meaningful to you and your community. Peace and love.
Peace and love. And that is our show for this week. This episode was produced by The City Music. As for me, I'm Jackie Gao, and thanks to my co-host, Francina Call.
May you move through this week embodying rest, love, and justice in ways that are meaningful to you and your community. Thanks for joining us today. Peace
Peace and love.